This is Juliana Burkhoff. I have several people who have joined, and I know that there'll be more people joining. Thank you so much for joining the proposed Delta Conveyance Project webinar meeting, Zoom meeting on community benefits. This is the second tribal workshop on community benefits. Let me turn it over to Anacita Augustinus, who will introduce the meeting.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anacita Augustinus, and I serve as the Tribal Policy Advisor for the Department of Water Resources. I also want to welcome everyone to our meeting and our tribal workshop. We understand that there's so many meetings going forward and there may not be a lot of attendance at this meeting. So those of you who've made the time and effort, we really say thank you for this. We are going to be recording this, so there's always that opportunity to be able to share it when you go back to your communities, which is our intention, as well as access to it for future viewing. And so today's objectives are to learn about the progress of the Delta Conveyance Project and the community benefits program development, how tribes can be a part of it, how we can document your participation as well as your concerns and anything input that you'd like to give us. Our main goal here is we really want to make sure that we ensure a really good understanding of the program itself. Throughout this presentation, we're going to be providing examples of other programs, unlike Delta Conveyance and maybe in some other communities, but things of that have had a large impact, such as the Delta Conveyance. This is such a unique project in itself. And so what we want to do is be able to show that there are other novel approaches to how you approach a community benefits program fund. And we're hoping that this ongoing communication can spur some conversation, as well as the ability to think really broadly of what could be developed through a community fund. And the input is so important. So this is not only the last tribal workshop. We intend to have more. This is the second tribal workshop. And so we definitely want to ensure that understanding. I'm not quite sure if I can see the attendance list. I'd like to acknowledge all the tribal representatives on the phone and that's participating, and thank you for joining us. And if any of the tribal representatives have a comment or so before we start, I'd like to be able to offer that opportunity to you at this time.
Any comments or notes so far? Okay. All right, as I said earlier, my name is Juliana Burkhoff. I'm a facilitator. I work with Ag Innovations. Ag Innovations is working with the Department of Water Resources to ensure that there's input into the Community Benefits Program and the Delta Conveyance Project. So the goal today, Anacita has outlined. The agenda is first, we had welcome and introductions. Now I'll talk about how to participate. You'll hear a little bit from Carrie Buckman on what the Delta Conveyance Project is and what the updates are for that. You'll hear about what we've heard so far about the about the Community Benefits Program and what we've heard so far from people. Then we'll give you a couple of examples of community benefits programs that will help you see the difference in different kind of programs. And finally, we'll have a chance for all of you to discuss those and provide input. If you have any questions at any point, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there's a place where you can provide input. Click on that reactions and you can raise your hand. Raising your hand lets us know that you want to get in the queue to say something. So just go to the bottom of your screen. On mine, it's the reaction button. Click on the reaction button and then your hand will raise and we'll ask you to unmute your microphone. So I'm going to turn to Carrie and have her provide a little bit of an update at this point about where the Delta Conveyance Project is. Carrie.
Thanks, Juliana. So as Anacita and Juliana mentioned, this is the second meeting. At the first meeting, participants indicated that they wanted some more time to think about this and to discuss it at a second meeting. So today we're going to provide some materials that you might have seen at the first meeting, but we know that some people might be coming this time that weren't able to attend at the first meeting. And so we wanted to provide at least a basis so that the discussion has some general understanding for everyone. So I'll go through it relatively quickly so it's not too repetitive for people who are at the first meeting, but if you have any questions, we'll have a time for clarifying questions and I'm happy to answer them. Thank you. So I wanted to just start by going over the purpose of the Delta Conveyance Project, the fundamental underlying reasons that we are considering this type of project. So our purpose is to modernize the aging State Water Project, or SWP, infrastructure in the Delta to restore and protect the reliability of SWP deliveries in a cost-effective manner consistent with the state's water resilience portfolio. So generally, DWR recognizes that the State Water Project is facing a lot of challenges in future years, and we'd like to be able to provide reliability or continue to provide reliability in the face of those challenges. And some of those challenges are reflected in our objectives. So we want to address sea level rise and climate change, minimize water supply disruption due to seismic risk, protect water supply reliability, and provide operational flexibility to improve aquatic conditions. So this slide, I'm going to just give an overview of the types of facilities that are going to be considered as part of the project or the alternatives. So in the north, we're looking at new intake facilities. The map shows 3. We would be picking 2 for the proposed project, although some alternatives may include 3. So there would be intakes, and then they would connect by tunnel following one of several routes to facilities in the South Delta. So the central and eastern corridor, the orange and green, both terminate in a pump station in the South Delta and a southern complex that includes a forebay. So there would be a pump station that pumps water up to the surface, where there's a forebay and a conveyance facility to the existing approach channel for the Banks pumping plant. And then the Banks pumping plant would pump that water up into the California Aqueduct. The other alternative shown on here is the Bethany alternative, which would have a tunnel that would follow the same blue eastern corridor down to Lower Roberts Island, where it would shift a little bit more southerly following the green route to a new pumping plant, the Bethany pumping plant, that would pump water from the tunnel up into Bethany Reservoir. So it would not have that southern forebay that would be needed to regulate flows between 2 pumping plants. It would just have 1 pumping plant that would go all the way up to Bethany. And we are also looking at multiple capacities. So the proposed project is 6,000 cubic feet per second, or CFS, which would have 2 3,000 CFS intakes. But we're also looking at 3,000 CFS, 4,500 CFS, or 7,500 CFS to understand the potential alternatives and the impacts and benefits of those alternatives. And this shows the work that we're really engaging in right now. So right now, the major focus is on preparing documents for CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, and NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. So under CEQA, we are preparing a draft environmental impact report. And under NEPA, the Corps is the lead agency, and they're preparing a draft environmental impact statement. And there will be 2 documents, but we're working to coordinate the review periods so they overlap. And we're looking at that about mid-2022. And then after that, we will be working to address comments, incorporate any necessary changes, finalize the EIR and EIS, and release decision documents. So right now we are really, in 2021, we're working very hard to prepare those documents, primarily on analyzing potential impacts and considering ways to avoid or reduce those impacts through mitigation measures. We're also starting on other environmental permitting processes shown on the bottom of the schedule. So we're starting work on a biological assessment under the Endangered Species Act, an incidental take permit application under the California Endangered Species Act. And the idea is that we would submit those around the time that the draft EIR becomes a public document. And the National Marine Fisheries Service and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would work on a biological opinion, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife would work on an incidental take permit at that time. Later in 2022, we'll start working on our change in point of diversion for our water rights, preparing for Delta Plan consistency, and starting on other environmental permits as well.
Great. So let's pause here. And if you have any questions so far, I know some of this has been presented before, but it's always great to absorb it several times. So does anybody have any questions at this point? If you have any questions, just go to the bottom of your Zoom page, click the reactions button and raise your hand, and we'll unmute you so you can ask a question. I don't see anybody who has a question, so I'll go forward.
Great. I just want to say thank you, Carrie, for providing that update on the Delta conveyance. I know that, it's important to kind of, just give a quick summary of that overview before we actually jump into the actual community benefits program. So, and if anyone does have questions on the Delta conveyance update, we definitely can circle back to that. So don't feel like, you've lost that opportunity. So please keep that in mind. Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks, Anacita. Okay, so I'm going to give a quick overview now of the community benefit status, the community benefit program status. As we mentioned before, we have had a number of meetings in the public. We've had a prior tribal meeting. We've also completed some interviews with community members. And as a result of that and some of the work that's come out of it, we've been able to put together a framework, a draft framework, a very preliminary draft framework of what this community benefits program could look like. And so I'm just going to go over some of the key factors right now, and just keep in mind that this is all very flexible. So this is based on the input we've heard so far. We're continuing to seek input, and we'd like to receive any input and continue to make changes. So I wanted to start with why we're considering a community benefits program for the Delta Conveyance Project. So first, we want to acknowledge that the direct project benefits, which are to state water project reliability, are not located inside the Delta. And also that if the project is approved, it could have potential adverse effects within the Delta for Delta communities that they would have to endure through construction. So essentially the effects would be in a different place than the benefits. And also we want to acknowledge the limitations of traditional CEQA environmental mitigation. So CEQA is a pretty prescriptive process. It has a list of resources and things that we need to check, and those may not encompass all of the potential types of effects that the Delta communities may experience. So we have these objectives that we'd like to accomplish for the community benefits program. First, we want to provide a mechanism for the Delta community to identify opportunities for local benefits. We also want to provide a mechanism for the project proponents, that is us, to demonstrate good faith, transparency, and accountability to the community through formal commitments developed with community members' input. And then protect and enhance the unique cultural, recreational, natural resource, and agricultural values of the Delta as an evolving place. So through our discussions with the community, we've found that we've generally been coming to two key elements of the community benefits program. The first is a community benefit fund, Delta Community Fund. And that would have a framework that really focuses on grassroots efforts. We would be looking to fund community priorities, and it would be developed and managed to empower the local community. So this would be a grant program to help accomplish the objectives that we identified in the prior slide for projects that the local community thinks are important. And then the second piece would be project implementation commitments. And these could include a variety of elements that would be accomplished through project implementation. So it could include things like hiring targets, jobs training, education, local business utilization, or potentially infrastructure and facilities where the project could leave behind facilities that could be useful to the local community. And an example of this would be that the potential project includes some park and ride facilities. And if those would be useful to local communities, we could leave them after the project to continue to be used. So the community benefits program is one of three distinct but complementary processes. The first is the regulatory mitigation. And so I mentioned before that right now under CEQA, we're working to identify potential significant impacts to the environment and look at ways to mitigate those effects. So as part of that regulatory mitigation component, we will be implementing feasible mitigation measures to avoid or reduce effects to the extent feasible. So that's the basis. The community benefits program is on top of that box. So the community benefits program purpose is to provide resources to direct benefits toward communities most impacted by implementation based on community collaboration. So we're not looking there to address impacts that are already identified in the EIR, but rather to go beyond that and provide benefits to the community in other ways. And the last process on here is an ombudsman program. And the idea here is that we want to have a single point of contact or clearinghouse for public relations, for lack of a better term, during the construction process. So if someone has a question about construction, or they see something happening and they want to understand it, or they think that there's an environmental impact that may not have been captured through the other processes, they have a place to call and a person to talk to. So for the community benefits program, I wanted to also mention how that fits in with tribal consultation. So the commitments that would be included as part of the community benefits program would be separate and apart from the required permit terms or environmental mitigation. So they would go beyond the traditional mitigation and commitments made during government to government tribal consultation under AB 52 or DWR's tribal engagement policy. So those consultation processes are very much underway, and we are not at a conclusion yet, but what we're working is to try to identify tribal cultural resources, identify the potential to affect them, and then identify potential mitigation for those effects, ways to avoid or reduce those effects. So that is part of that first box. So that's regulatory mitigation. So the community benefits program would be additional benefits that could be on top of that. So I wanted to close with just a discussion of the core commitments that DWR is proceeding with. So if the Delta Conveyance Project is approved, the core commitments for potential community benefits program would include, we would be transparent. So we're trying to have an open process to collaborate effectively. Constructive participation would be in good faith with the community to create a positive legacy. Inclusive, we want broad stakeholder participation to expand the capture of voices. We want it to be fair, that the benefits are related to the localized nature of effects. And this last one, I think, is perhaps the most important, that it's unconditional. So community benefits are not dependent on support for the project. We really understand that stakeholders are not supporting the project. And what we're looking for here is ideas that could provide community benefits, but we don't want to imply that by providing us ideas for community benefits that in any way indicates support or acceptance of the project. We understand that people may be providing us input at the same time that they are working to not have the project move forward. We think that there are two separate tracks. So I think, Juliana, it's back to you.
And we just checked, does anybody have a question so far? No, I don't see anyone who has a question. Okay, so let's go forward then and talk a little bit about what we've found out so far. So as Carrie said, Ag Innovations has worked with Department of Water Resources to find out what people think about the Delta Conveyance Project and the Community Benefits Program. So many of you have seen that we worked with the Department of Water Resources to conduct an environmental justice survey, and that was in fall of 2020. We asked people to rank different priorities. We asked them what the most important things were. We asked people if they were disadvantaged, if they had different priorities, and we asked people what they did in the Delta. So generally on this slide, you see that people ranked the natural environment, clean air and drinking water, habitat for fish, migrating birds and wildlife, very, very important to them. People prioritize preserving and improving the Delta, its community involvement, local agriculture and local recreation. Disadvantaged community members and particularly ranked clean air, safe drinking water higher than some of the other participants. We asked people what they liked about the Delta, and people overwhelmingly ranked the beautiful rural landscape, natural environment, history, and culture as very important. We asked people what they did in the Delta, and people said they spent several hours a week fishing or walking or just hanging out in the Delta. So those responses, and there's quite a few more, help us understand what kinds of things are beneficial to the Delta residents. So we also wanted to find out more about the community benefits idea. So we conducted interviews, and we had 3 workshops and a 4th workshop with some of the tribal members. So people in those workshops and interviews said they don't like the Delta Conveyance Project, but they are willing to talk about a community benefits program. People ranked natural resources, water quality, recreation, ag, culture, and history as important benefit categories. Ideas fell into those categories. People suggested languages to the concept, purpose, objectives, which has now been incorporated in the current language for the community benefits program. And people made thoughtful and very comprehensive ideas about how those funding ideas could be included in a Delta fund. So there's a number of different suggestions in the categories that we've heard so far. What we've been doing is, as people have made a suggestion, we've just added it to these lists of categories. So you'll see on this slide that there's lots of ideas for water and air quality, public safety, recreation, habitat conservation, culture and history. So we've just been keeping this comprehensive list. and ideas for economy, infrastructure, agriculture, education and workforce development, and levee maintenance. So there's a huge list of, we've just been keeping track of ideas for things that could be funded to improve the Delta. So does anybody have any questions on what we've learned so far before we turn to the different kinds of community benefit programs there might be?
Hi, this is Crystal with Shingle Springs. Great. And I actually did have a question. And maybe this, I think this is my first tribal community benefits meeting that I was able to attend, but maybe I missed it, but did you have a breakdown, or do you have any data reflecting how many people from tribal communities participated in this survey?
In the survey, not very many, but I can't remember the number. We did have environmental participants in the environmental justice survey. I'm not going to say the number because I can't really remember, but we did have some. And we did have some in the interviews that we've conducted, and we did have some participants in each one of the workshops, and certainly for the workshop that we held in May. So it's not nearly enough, Crystal, for us to say anything really on, not enough to say tribal members thought this instead of that. So we do know what they thought, but nothing that we had a huge response from. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I think, I guess my follow-up would be, and I think I know the answer, but I want to be certain. When the survey was being developed, I understand there were other stakeholders that were consulted on the development of the survey, potentially survey questions, I believe. And was there tribal input that you received when the survey was being developed?
Yes. When we developed the survey questions, first the survey method, the survey questions per se, and very importantly, the outreach, we had input from not only tribal members, but people who had done specific outreach to Native American groups on environmental justice questions. So yes, that doesn't mean that we did as well as we wanted to with getting that input, but yes, we did have that input. Thanks.
Thank you.
Did you have another question, Crystal?
No, I was just saying thank you.
Oh, okay, thanks. All right. Any other questions so far about the environmental justice survey, or the interviews that we conducted for community benefits, or the 4 workshops that we've had so far? Nope. Okay, then I'll go forward to the next slide to talk a little bit about different kinds of community benefits programs. So community benefits programs are very typical in some kind of infrastructure projects, but haven't been as typical in large water construction projects. So, but we've looked at several different kinds of community benefits programs, and have had many consultations with experts who've developed community benefits programs. So generally, it's a defined set of commitments that the project proponents make in coordination or collaboration with the local community. And those are things that the community decides are things that are important to them and that would make significant economic and social benefits to them. The idea of a community benefits program originally grew from smart growth and environmental justice movements, as people were seeing that economic development didn't necessarily bring benefits to local communities or affected residents. The community benefits program grew up as a response to that. The community benefit programs are frequently used in the United States and international development programs to ensure that local communities benefit from large-scale infrastructures such as roads, dams, mines, pipelines, those kinds of things. So they can include an agreement between project proponents and sponsors, municipal or regional governments, faith-based, community-based organizations, and residents. Sometimes it's not an agreement per se, but a program that gets set up, and then the program has agreements. But it comes up with, here's a set of things that are going to happen. It often includes municipal, county, or state actions that require project sponsors to negotiate or provide community benefits in any particular project. For example, in Oregon, you must fulfill certain living wage, local hiring goals, job training program requirements, and minority and women contracting goals with anything that the state does in a large infrastructure. The funds go to a wide variety of things, including affordable housing, recreation, habitat restoration, public art, infrastructure, education, job training, all kinds of different things. So it's a range of things that we can see in community benefit programs. There's different kinds of approaches, and let me just quickly go over several of them, which just give you some idea of the different kinds of things that there are. And please ask a question at any point. There's a project in London, which is called the Thames Tideway Sewage Tunnel. It's a sewage tunnel that's moving sewage instead of directly into the Thames River into a specific conveyance. The construction contractor surveyed all the communities along the tunnel route to find out what people's needs and priorities were. And then the permitting authority, who was going to permit the sewage tunnel, included those prioritized community benefit projects in the development consent order. Then the construction authority set up a bunch of different entities to implement those. So there's job programs, there's public access programs, the community grants program, there's public arts, and each one of those has a different organizational structure and budget from the Thames Tideway construction contractor. Then the municipal governments, the NGOs, contractors, and the public agencies set up a forum to discuss successes and challenges as it's implemented. So that's one model. There's also a model called the Low County Alliance for Model Communities. This is a program in South Carolina. The Port Authority planned a new port facility and a new transfer station. And the Low County Alliance, which was an organized group, met and asked the city of North Charleston to develop and sign a mitigation plan agreement to fund $4.8 million in community priorities. So there already was an environmental mitigation program, and they met with the city to set up a different set of community benefit priorities. And those priorities are affordable housing, air, water, noise monitoring, maritime job training, and a bunch of human health improvements. To implement that program, the city appointed a working group to implement the plan, and the city hired a planner to coordinate the different efforts. And the Community First Land Trust was set up to acquire the land as it became available from the port and transfer facility to implement affordable housing. So you see yet a different model here to implement the different priorities. There's a program in California in Morro Bay. Castle Wind is developing a project offshore the city of Morro Bay to develop a large offshore wind project. And so Castle Wind signed 2 agreements, one with the city of Morro Bay to provide clean jobs, energy, environmental education, and reduced costs. And then they set up a second agreement with the Commercial Fishing Association to provide mutual benefits to fishing in Morro Bay. First, to not affect fishing, and also to provide more fishing protection for habitat and more vigorous marketing. The project's not implemented, but those agreements will be part of the permit. So those are some examples of different kinds of projects. And so at this point, what I'd like to do is find out from people, do you have any questions about these kinds of projects and what they do, and how they might be implemented or learned about for the Delta communities? So as I said, just raise your hand and we'll call on you, and this is a good time for you to provide input.
Thank you, Juliana. This is Anacita. You know, when you're talking about some of those models, especially about the different governance structures, do we have more information on especially the one in Morro Bay where they have 2 agreements and how they're doing the governance structure? How does the fund fund capacity to build these governance structures? That's probably my where I'd like to go while folks are thinking about their questions.
So they signed an agreement, And Castle Wind specified how much money they would provide the city of Morro Bay for environmental education, for green infrastructure, et cetera. And they specify that in their agreement. And it would become just part of Morro Bay's programming. The agreement with the fishermen is much less detailed because the offshore wind site hasn't been developed yet. So the one that's for the city is pretty developed. It would become a city set of programs, and the money from Castle Wind would go to those city programs. The one that's for the fishermen is not very clear at all how it would be developed. And I think that's really where we need to hear input from folks, is what seems to make sense. These all are quite different, and it's very clear that the community had a hand in deciding what the structure would be, to make sure that it was developed and implemented in a way that made sense for them. There's no like cookie cutter model on how these happen.
Yeah, I see that, and I do see, to our tribal representatives and participants, what we want to ensure is that you have early information, knowing that your Delta community, Delta neighbors that are non-tribal are getting this information, will probably be working on their priorities and their concerns. And we want to make sure that there's developing that space for the tribal concerns and tribal priorities, which might align and obviously might be different. And so this is what we want to make sure that we have this type of input, or if you're getting this information, first time. And I do say that we had this meeting scheduled actually in late September, and we moved it because of the impending fires. And so at that time, we did have quite a larger RSVP list. So I definitely know that we'll probably continue to, do our outreach to get this information to the tribal communities, because right now, as you can see after yesterday's, if you're in Sacramento area, now we've got we had some good rainfall, and of course there's some issues with some flooding areas, but there's always something there with these events. But this is very much a big long-term project, and definitely need some your decisions and how we can help. And maybe, Crystal, I know that the Shingle Springs has taken a lead in organizing a Delta meeting for folks. And if you need this information to share, we have the slides. We have another. Juliana, don't correct me if I'm wrong, at the first tribal workshop recorded on Zoom. That can also be accessed.
Yeah, if you go to Department of Water Resources, Delta Conveyance Project, you'll see Community Benefits Program. And on that Community Benefits Program page, you'll see all the informational resources and the community workshops. If you click on either of those, you can find the agenda for the community meeting or the tribal meeting, the meeting summary, the recording, and the PowerPoint. And those will all be in Spanish and in English. So the information is all there if you want any more information. And of course, we'd be happy to provide more information if you need it.
Thank you, Anacita and Juliana. We really appreciate that. And, I just wanted to update you a bit on the group that we had been, sorry, I'm playing with my mute button over here, but the group that the tribal group that we had been convening, we haven't had a meeting. It's been a handful of months as we just struggle with what our main priorities are. And so just speaking for Shingle Springs, this just really hasn't been our priority as we deal with COVID, as we deal with, the Delta variant, as we deal with, the health and safety of tribal members and deaths on the Rancheria. And so that's really been our focus. So we're hoping to be able to reconvene our group. And so I do appreciate the offer to share information. And so if and when we're able to get something scheduled, we will circle back with all of you.
No, I appreciate that. And yes, I totally understand. That's one reason why, add to that list, that impending list, the fires that were also quite devastating to many of our tribal communities.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
But definitely this information, however we can, assist with the transmittal to everyone that did RSVP, we definitely will be providing you with the information shared today, the Zoom link, the recordation for you to take back to your communities.
Rebecca?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Rebecca Allen, I see that you raised your hand. Let me unmute you so you can ask a question.
Thank you. And I don't have a question just so much as a UAIC really continues to really struggle with this project. I don't know how you would not recognize the tribal cultural significance of this landscape. And please do understand that from the UAIC perspective, and I suspect many other tribes feel the same, that they see this project as a continuation of the cultural genocide and the violence that has been perpetrated not only against tribal members, but the landscapes that they value. It's very hard to wrap our heads around benefits in that same sentence. And I think you hear, I think the loudest message you can get today is just the silence of input, because that struggle is so very hard. And I will say for UAIC that the tribe sends its non-tribal staff to these meetings because discussion of this project continues to really be something that the tribe holds with grief. We also, Crystal is spot on that there are so many other priorities right now. And UAIC feels that the state is taking advantage of those things that are pulling tribal input away from this project. We have asked before that the process be slowed because of COVID. Certainly the fires are there, and we ask that again. And I don't mean this to be disrespectful. I think all of you here have heard me say this in one form or another, but I do want to get this onto the record that the examples we were given today were very generic. They were not tribally sensitive, and they were not tribally specific. And that makes the silence speak that much more. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. I totally appreciate your candidness and your reflection. The examples that we provided definitely are not tribally specific because we have not had that level of engagement. These are just things that we've heard from the non-tribal community that we wanted to share. There were some specific items that mentioned something regarding the under the heading of culture that talked about interpretive signage. And I don't know, and we'll have to check whether that came from a non-tribal voice or not, but we definitely know that there's that space that's needed. And that's our intent with these workshops, and to show this this is an early process, and we are sensitive to the pandemic and as well as these other emergency events, and I know that's quite a bit, and of course the nature of the harshness of the communities having to deal, and condolences to, not only your communities, but all the communities have suffered from the harsh realities of COVID and the deaths. That has been very difficult. Our intent is, we're doing our best to be as respectful as possible. We want to make sure, that this is early. We are very much early in the process. And our due diligence is to provide you the information that we provide to the general public, so that you as a tribal representative can report back to your councils, to your leadership, that this is a process that is moving forward. And I also apologize if you feel that it's being taken advantage. And I know that feeling. I mean, sometimes we see these processes continue on despite the best efforts of saying slow down to the state. However, my response to that is that the examples that did not have tribal specifics, we're hoping in the future that there will be very much a tribal specific information that we could actually share to a non-tribal audience, because that would be an ideal goal, is that if we had the tribal input that would tell the non-tribal public, here is the information. We're very sensitive of not putting into these examples words ourselves, unless they come, and not trying to reflect back, well, we think the tribal community would say this or that. We want that to be authentic voices and concerns through the outreach. Because we could have said, well, we think the tribes would say this, but that's not the approach we're taking on this. And so, we're very hopeful to continuing to have updates, which we will continue to do so. And also, try to provide as much information as possible. But my personal goal is to generate information that could then be shared with the non-tribal audience. So as they develop these governance structures, and as they develop, and I intend to do that anyhow, as my role as policy advisor for the Department of Water Resources, and working closely with Carrie, is making sure that in these other spaces that do not normally have traditional spaces for tribal voices, have that space. And so that way, when they're discussing these items, they see that we're having tribal workshops. They want to know what's the result of these tribal workshops. So, but I don't want to take up more time if somebody else has a comment or anything. But I definitely just want to say, Dr. Allen, I definitely hear you. And I thank you for that frankness. And it is a reminder to everyone on the phone that don't normally deal with United Auburn Indian Communities concerns, to be able to hear it directly from you. So I do appreciate that, because there are some different voices here, participants from DWR, that may not have heard that directly as a perspective for one of the tribal representatives. So thank you for that.
And Rebecca, I also want to thank you. Very well said. Thank you for expressing what many of us are just, don't have the heart to continue to talk about. I think it's important that, we are in these forums, but we're fatigued at this point, and Anacita, I've told you this before, I do not, by any means do I believe you have, an easy job. I know it's very difficult. And I think, for the benefit of, the other state folks here in this meeting, is that it's not just about tribal input. It's not just about tribal reactions. It's about, we live in a reality where these types of projects move forward, and they move forward without tribal values. And that is the key. That is fundamentally where there is a deficit. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. This is Rebecca again. And for those of you who have not participated in this, please understand that it's just not about the place of the Delta that has UAIC, and I suspect other tribes concerned. It's the very spirituality of this place. It goes back to creation stories. and those are not my stories to share. And so it's very hard to tell the larger tribal community or larger non-tribal community about tribal values when you have to express first that the Delta is at the very core of Miwok, Maidu, and Nishanan identity and spirituality. And that is the seriousness and the weight with which these tribes approach this project. And I hope you can understand the fatigue.
Are there other comments or input?
I know we've heard from Shingle Springs and United Auburn. Are there any other tribal representatives on the line from other tribal communities that we're not aware of? I'm not familiar with some of the names. There's a Michelle and on the line. Is that from staff or is that from someone from the outside?
I can't tell, unfortunately, Anacita, any more than you can.
Okay, that's okay. Because I would like to, I know that, we've set this aside for discussion and input. And if Crystal and Crystal Moreno and Rebecca Allen, if you said, we definitely have recorded those comments and we've heard it, and definitely it's reflecting back and it's also going to help guide us. I mean, this information you share, I don't want you to feel like this is information that's just not going anywhere. I think that what you share every time you speak, both of you, it's always going to have an impact. And I'm hoping that, we can definitely show you in the future the impact and the how it's also being utilized to help guide our direction. And if there are any other tribal voices, we definitely welcome to hear from you. Either if not in this forum, feel free to connect with me directly. Because I would like to have some assistance in how we approach this in bridging what we do with the tribal community and the non-tribal community, because that is going to be, that's a partnership that needs to be developed locally. And we're here in our capacities to assist with that foundation and that structure, but those relationships have to be, people have to show up for that. And I'm hoping that you can give us some guidance on how we could help to do that. Do you think about, and this may be an open question for maybe another meeting, is it too early to develop or request some type of joint local discussion group so that you could get to know those Delta neighbors if you don't already know them, that are thinking about what their core values are and where they intend to go. So if there's anything we can do to help support that process, we are here to help to do so as well. And so those are just some of the things that we'd like to continue to keep advancing. And as I mentioned early on, I work very closely with Carrie, and our goal is to revisit these tribal workshops as often as we can as this process develops. It's very early on. I know that we're hoping to show that development and continue to show and share with you what we're hearing from the outside communities, because I also think that's a value to be shared with our tribal partners. These are the things that are being discussed in other outside forums that we want to bring to you so that you're aware of, and that those obviously any of those outside forums, everyone is open. It's open to everyone, and we always encourage tribal participation at those types of open forums.
Okay. I want to give space to anyone who wants to make a comment. If you have no comments, then Carrie, I'll ask you to talk about the next steps.
Thanks, Juliana. So this is a conceptual drawing of where we're going next with the community benefits framework. And this is really focused on the community benefits framework, not the environmental process as a whole, which does include the more detailed process for tribal consultation. So for the community benefits program, we're working now on the information and education. And so the next step, in addition to what we've been doing with the tribal workshops, is to have a case study workshop And Juliana, maybe you can provide more information on that next.
I'm
Then
happy.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, just to let you know, we're working on developing a case study workshop, which would be November 17th in the evening. And we'll have several people who developed or are running community benefits programs talk about how they developed the community benefits program, how people got engaged, how they chose priorities, and how they're administered. And we'll also have somebody from a Partnership for Working Families, which is now called Power Switch Action. And they do a lot of legal consulting with people who want to develop community benefits programs to help them figure out how to develop them and how to implement them so that they meet community needs. That's going to be on the 17th of November.
So the step after information and education will really focus on community engagement. So before the final EIR is certified, we will be doing both some informal querying where we are reaching out and trying to collect information from people through interviews or meetings. And then we'll also be doing some outreach where we'll be having small group briefings and community meetings. And those will be to try to work through some of the remaining questions regarding the community benefits program. So some of the organizational questions, like if we have a fund, how should it be set up? Who should administer it? How to prioritize projects or types of projects? Also more details about the specifics of economic development commitments. So right now we've had a lot of ideas for things like targeted hiring and job training, but really trying to prioritize and finalize and figure out what people are really interested in, and then an implementation plan. So all of that information will come together. We will memorialize that input, and after a decision is made and we collect the permits, we will be working to implement the final program.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you so much for participating. So there's lots of different ways for you to stay up to date. And I recognize and appreciate that there are too many things for tribal members to stay up to date with. We're happy to funnel that information to you in any way that's possible. Here are, if you go to the water.ca.gov website, you'll see programs, State Water Project, Delta Conveyance, Community Benefits Program, and that has a lot of information there. You can read, as I said, the meeting summaries, the background PowerPoint presentations, and the suggestions that we've heard so far. There's also a project hotline that you can call. There's also information that comes across on Twitter, and then you can always email deltaconveyance@water.ca.gov if you have any specific questions. So I thank you very much for your participation and hope that this was useful for you to find out what's been talked about and discussed so far. And we'll continue to meet with you as you need in the future. Oh, Rebecca, did you want to ask a question?
No, I've been contemplating Anacita's statement of, is this too early? And while I think Anacita knows me well enough to know that I normally really encourage proactive meetings and proactive thoughts, I ask that you consider in your timeline as you work with tribes that if this goes forward, there will be a period of tribal mourning, and that takes time. I'm not sure there is a way to be proactive on this topic because it is so very heavy.
Thank you for that, Rebecca. I think I'd like to follow up on a one-on-one basis on that concept. And maybe that is something that we definitely can consider.
And thank you all for your presentation and professionalism today. I do very much appreciate it.
Thank you. And we're happy to provide you information in whatever way is possible. Carrie, do you want to take us out?
Oh, I just wanted to thank everyone. I know that we've been hearing the difficulty of participating in this project at all, and especially right now. And I really, really do appreciate the time that you've spent and the emotions and information you shared with us. So thank you so very much for participating. Anacita?
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I totally appreciate that on behalf of the Department of Water Resources, and I know we've got colleagues and staff on the line, so I know that you've shared some things here which we definitely appreciate, and I know that my goal is to see and make sure that we react and we reflect it in the work that we do. So thank you all, and I guess we can. There's no other further comments. We'll close the meeting and say thank you, and provide the follow-up information on the links as well as the presentation materials.
Thank you all for participating. We'll give you that information. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.